I never planned to destroy my family. But when I discovered my father's real will, hidden in the old grandfather clock, I realized they had already destroyed themselves. They didn't know it yet. My name is Eleanor Morgan, and until 6 months ago, I thought I knew what family meant. At 34, I was a high school English teacher in Seacliff. My life was modest, unlike my family's wealth and status. The Morgans owned half the shops on Main Street. Our Victorian mansion stood tall, watching over the harbor like a guardian. Growing up, I had always been the black sheep, the daughter who chose books over business, teaching over fortune. My father, James Morgan, was a self-made millionaire who built Morgan Enterprises from nothing. He was stern but fair, at least with me. My mother, Catherine, was the perfect socialite, impeccable in appearance, ruthless in ambition. And then there was my brother, Richard, 5 years older and groomed since birth to inherit the family empire. We weren't close, my family and I, but blood is blood, or so I thought. When Dad died of a heart attack at 62, something felt off at the funeral. Mom was composed, too composed, in her designer black dress. Richard stood beside her, checking his phone. But what caught my attention was the woman in the back row. Late 30s, unfamiliar, watching us with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. She disappeared before I could approach her. 3 days later, we gathered in Theodore Blackwell's office, Dad's attorney for 30 years. Theodore's face was grave as he adjusted his glasses and began reading the will. To my son Richard Morgan, I leave Morgan Enterprises in its entirety, along with the family home and all associated properties. I waited for my name, it never came. Eleanor Morgan has, by her choices and actions, removed herself from consideration as a beneficiary. The room spun. Mom placed a sympathetic hand on mine, a gesture for Theodore's benefit, not my own. Her emerald ring caught the light, cold and gleaming. "I'm sorry, Eleanor," Theodore said, not meeting my eyes. "Your father amended his will 3 months ago." "That's impossible," I whispered. "Dad and I had dinner together 2 months ago. He was proud of me, he said so." Richard cleared his throat. "Ellie, Dad was disappointed by your choices. You know that, teaching when you could have been part of something greater." "He never said that," my voice shook. "Never." Mom sighed. "Darling, your father didn't want to hurt you, but he built this legacy for someone who would honor it." I looked at their faces, polished, practiced expressions of regret masking something else, something that made my skin crawl. As we left, Theodore touched my arm. "Eleanor, your father left this for you." He handed me a small envelope. Inside was a single key, old-fashioned, heavy brass. At home, my small cottage by the beach, I poured a glass of wine with shaking hands. The setting sun painted my walls orange as tears blurred my vision. The key sat on my coffee table, a question without an answer. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "They're lying to you. If you're still with me on this journey, please consider hitting like and subscribe. Trust me when I say what happened next changed everything I thought I knew about family and myself." The text message haunted me for days. "They're lying to you." 4 simple words that cracked open everything I thought I knew. I started with Dad's study, sneaking into the mansion while Richard was at work and Mom was at her weekly spa appointment. Mrs. Collins, our housekeeper since I was a child, let me in with a sad smile. "They've already started clearing his things," she whispered, leading me upstairs. The study felt hollow without Dad's presence. His leather chair still held the impression of his body, but his shelves were half empty, papers gone. Richard worked fast. I ran my fingers along Dad's antique grandfather clock, a wedding gift from my grandfather, passed down through generations. Its steady tick-tock has been the soundtrack of my childhood visits to this room. "Your father wound that clock every Sunday," Mrs. Collins said. "He never missed it once in 30 years. Something about the clock called to me. I opened its tall wooden door, studying its pendulum, weights, and chains. Nothing seemed unusual until I noticed a small irregularity in the wood at the back of the cabinet. Pressing against it, I felt it give way. A hidden compartment slid open, revealing a sealed envelope. My heart pounding, I took it and slipped it into my bag as I heard the front door open. "Mom's home early," Mrs. Collins whispered urgently. "Use the back stairs." Later that night, alone in my cottage, I opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a handwritten letter dated 1 week before Dad's death. My dearest Eleanor, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and things haven't proceeded as they should have. The brass key opens the safe deposit box 247 at First Seacliff Bank. Go alone. Trust no one in the family right now, not your mother, not Richard. Remember the summer you were 10, and we watched the meteor shower from the lighthouse? You asked if wishes on shooting stars come true. I told you they do if you work hard enough to make them happen. It's time to make this wish come true, my girl. All my love. Dad. I read the letter 7 times, tears streaming down my face. The next morning, I went to First Seacliff Bank, key in hand. The manager led me to a private room after I presented the key and my ID. The metal box he placed before me felt impossibly heavy with secrets. Inside, I found several documents. A real will, dated 2 weeks before Dad's death, is notarized and official. Financial records show massive transfers to offshore accounts. A flash drive. A faded photograph of my father with a woman I didn't recognize, both smiling, arms around each other. A birth certificate for someone named Rebecca Wilson. The will was straightforward. The business was still Richard's, but I was to receive 40% of the company shares and the beach house property. Most shocking was a trust fund for my daughter Rebecca Wilson, with instructions to locate her. I had a half-sister. Back home, I plugged in the flash drive. It contained years of email correspondence between my father and a woman named Margaret Wilson, his sister. An aunt I'd never known existed. The emails revealed a devastating truth. 25 years ago, Dad had had an affair with his assistant. When Mom got pregnant, she threatened to ruin him. She demanded that Margaret, Dad's sister, vanish with the pregnant assistant. Mom orchestrated everything, and Richard, at 19, helped conceal the payments that kept them away. Dad had reconnected with Margaret 5 years ago and had been building a relationship with his other daughter in secret. He had been planning to make everything right. Until his heart attack. The final email from Dad to Margaret was sent the day before he died. I've told Catherine I'm changing my will tomorrow. It's time for the truth. Eleanor deserves to know her sister. Rebecca deserves her birthright. I won't live in shame anymore. My father was murdered. I knew it with cold certainty. I needed allies. The woman at the funeral, could that have been Rebecca? I found Margaret Wilson through social media, living 2 hours away in Portland. I drove there the next day, rehearsing what I would say and how I would introduce myself to an aunt who had been erased from my life. Her house was small but charming, with a garden of wildflowers. When she opened the door, I saw my father's eyes looking back at me. "Eleanor," she whispered, not surprised, "you look like him." Over tea in her sunroom, Margaret filled in the missing pieces. My mother threatened to make false abuse claims against Dad if he didn't send Margaret away with Joanne, the pregnant assistant. Your mother comes from old money, Eleanor. Her family's connections could have destroyed James. He chose to protect everyone by giving in to her demands. And Rebecca, I asked. She's my daughter now, legally. Joanne died when Becky was 15. Margaret's eyes filled with tears. James found us 5 years ago. He'd been searching for years after your mother's father died, and her threats held less power. She was at the funeral, I said. It wasn't a question. Margaret nodded. She wanted to see him one last time. She wanted to see you. I need to meet her. She's been waiting for that her whole life. Rebecca arrived an hour later, 35, with Dad's smile and a quiet intensity. We stared at each other, 2 branches of the same tree finally touching. You were his princess, she said without bitterness. He kept every newspaper clipping about your teaching awards. We talked until midnight, comparing notes about the father we had shared in different ways. Then, I showed her the will and the financial records. Mom threatened him again when he wanted to change his will, I explained. But this time, he wasn't backing down. Rebecca studied the medical report I'd managed to get. A heart attack is convenient, undetectable if done right. What do you mean? I'm a pharmaceutical researcher. Some drugs can trigger fatal cardiac events with minimal trace evidence. The pieces aligned with horrible clarity. My mother had killed my father rather than share the Morgan fortune or have her perfect reputation tarnished by scandal. Over the next 2 months, Rebecca and I built our case carefully. I built a relationship with Detective Marcus Rivera. He had questions about Dad's death, but he lacked the leverage to investigate the powerful Morgan family without a reason. I returned to the family mansion regularly, playing the role of the hurt but healing daughter. I watched Richard struggle with the business, making costly mistakes Dad never would have made. Mom drank more, hosted more parties, and spent more money. I discovered the combination to Dad's safe by recalling the significance of the meteor shower he'd mentioned in his letter, August 12, 1999. I found recordings of phone calls between my mother and Richard. They talked about Dad's health issues and how to keep him from changing the will. "He's becoming sentimental about Eleanor," Mom's voice said on one recording. "We can't allow that to derail everything we've built." "The medication adjustments should help keep him confused," Richard replied. "Theodore won't question anything if James seems unstable." They had been drugging him slowly, making him appear mentally unfit to change his will. And when that wasn't enough, they had taken more permanent action. During this time, I reconnected with Dr. Sean Walker, who had been a year ahead of me in high school and was now the county medical examiner. We had run into each other at the coffee shop near the hospital, and our friendship quickly rekindled. "Ellie, these medications in combination could trigger cardiac arrest," he confirmed after reviewing the prescription records Rebecca had helped me understand. "And your father had no history of needing these drugs." With Sean's help, we built a medical case for exhumation. With Detective Rivera's help, we noted the financial issues. We also spoke to Mrs. Collins about odd visitors and powders in Dad's food before he died. The hardest part was seeing Mom and Richard at family events. I had to smile through Sunday dinners while gathering proof of their wrongdoings. I learned to lie convincingly, to appear broken while growing stronger. I discovered a strength in myself that I never knew existed. Mom noticed the change in me. "You seem different lately, Eleanor," she remarked at a family dinner. "Almost your father's daughter, finally." "I've been doing a lot of thinking about legacy," I replied, meeting her gaze. "About what we owe to those who came before us." Something flickered in her eyes, uncertainty, perhaps even fear. Richard tried to buy my silence with a generosity payment of $100,000. "Because family should help family," he said smoothly. I accepted the check with grateful tears, then used it to fund the investigation and secure the best prosecutors. As we built our case, Rebecca became the sister I'd never had. We were different in many ways. I leaned toward the literary, while she focused on science. She was analytical, and I was more intuitive. Still, we shared the same moral compass and the same drive to honor our father. "Do you ever wonder what it would have been like?" she asked one night as we sorted through Dad's hidden financial records. "Growing up together." "Every day since I learned about you," I admitted. "But maybe we're exactly who we need to be because of the paths we walked separately." 6 months after Dad's death, we were ready. If you're invested in Ellie's journey for justice, hit like and subscribe to follow this story to its conclusion. The revenge she's about to unleash will change the Morgan family forever. The Morgan Charity Gala was my father's favorite event. It was a night when Seacliff's elite came to our mansion to raise money for local causes. This year, Mom picked Legacy as the theme. The displays celebrate the Morgan family's contributions to the community across 3 generations. It was perfect. I arrived early, wearing Dad's favorite color, a deep blue gown that made my mother frown. "Darling, we agreed on black and gold for family members," she whispered, air-kissing my cheek. "Dad always said blue brought out my eyes," I replied with a gentle smile. Richard was busy charming investors, his wife Melissa at his side in designer black, diamonds glittering at her throat. The mansion gleamed with fresh flowers and hired help. A photographer circulated, capturing the Morgan family's generosity for posterity. At precisely 8:30 p.m., as scheduled, Detective Rivera arrived with 2 uniformed officers. I watched from across the room as he approached Richard first, speaking quietly. Richard's face drained of color. Mom noticed immediately, making her way across the room with practiced grace. Detective, what a pleasure to have you join our little event, though I don't recall seeing your name on the guest list. Mrs. Morgan, I'm here on official business. His voice carried enough to draw attention from nearby guests. We need to speak with you and your son privately. Whatever for, surely it can wait until tomorrow. Her smile remained fixed, but her knuckles whitened around her champagne glass. I'm afraid it concerns the death of James Morgan and new evidence that has come to light. The room didn't fall silent, that only happens in movies. But a ripple of awareness spread through the crowd, conversations faltering as people turned to watch. This is hardly the venue, Detective. Richard stepped forward, placing himself between Rivera and our mother. That was my cue. I moved to the small stage where the string quartet had been playing. The microphone was already set up for the evening's speeches. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, my voice steadier than I felt. I'm Eleanor Morgan. Many of you have known me my whole life. You watched me grow up in this house, graduate from Seacliff High, and return to teach there. Faces turned toward me, curious, including my mother's, now tight with dawning horror. Tonight's theme is legacy. It's about what we leave behind, what we pass on to those who come after us. My father believed in that deeply. I nodded to the back of the room, where Rebecca entered, looking so much like Dad it made whispers immediately flutter through the crowd. I'd like to introduce someone to you. This is Rebecca Wilson, my sister, my father's daughter. The shock was palpable. Mom took an involuntary step back, bumping into a waiter. 6 months ago, my father was preparing to acknowledge Rebecca publicly, to amend his will to include both of his daughters. He recorded his intentions. I held up a small remote and pressed play. Dad's voice filled the room from hidden speakers. I've lived with this shame long enough. Eleanor and Rebecca both deserve their birthright. Catherine and Richard have threatened me, but I won't be silenced anymore. Richard lunged toward the sound system, but Detective Rivera caught his arm. I continued, my voice clear. My father never had a chance to execute his new will. He died suddenly. My mother and brother slowly poisoned him with medications that confused him. Then, he suffered a fatal cardiac event. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Theodore Blackwell pushed to the front, his face ashen. These are serious allegations, Eleanor, reckless ones. Not allegations, Theodore, facts. I nodded to Sean, who stepped forward with a medical file. Dr. Walker has the toxicology results from my father's recently exhumed body, and I have the recordings of my mother and brother discussing their plans. Mom's composure finally cracked. This is absurd. Richard, call our attorney immediately. But Richard stood frozen as Detective Rivera read him his rights. The perfect son, the golden heir, handcuffed in his custom tuxedo before Seacliff's most influential citizens. I approached my mother, stopping beyond her reach. The investigators found your fingerprints on the pill bottles, Mom. They found the payments to the nurse who adjusted Dad's medication. For a moment, something like respect flickered across her face, then her eyes hardened. You have no idea what I sacrificed for this family. You mean what you sacrificed others for, I corrected gently. Dad, Margaret, Rebecca, and I all sacrificed for your pride. As they were led away, I addressed the stunned crowd. The Morgan legacy isn't buildings and businesses. It's true. My father wanted that truth known. Tonight, I honor his real legacy. Theodore approached me afterward, his face drawn. I never knew, Eleanor, about any of it. James seemed confused in those last meetings. I thought it was age. It was by design, I said without accusation. You have the real will now. In the days that followed, Seacliff buzzed with the scandal. Richard's wife filed for divorce. Mom's society friends distanced themselves. Morgan Enterprises' stock dropped at first. It then stabilized after I announced that Rebecca and I would hire professional management but keep family ownership. The criminal case was airtight. Mrs. Collins also talked about the odd powders. She mentioned how Mom insisted on cooking Dad's meals herself. The recordings proved premeditation. Richard accepted a plea deal, testifying against Mom in exchange for a reduced sentence. I visited Richard once before his sentencing. He looked smaller somehow in his prison jumpsuit. His confident facade had crumbled. Why did you go along with it? I asked the question that had haunted me. He stared at his hands for a long time. I was afraid of her too, he finally said. Afraid of disappointing her, afraid of losing everything. He looked up, eyes hollow. I never thought she'd kill him. But you helped her. I've been helping her cover things up my whole life. It seemed like one more secret. His voice broke. I'm sorry, Ellie, not for Dad, for never being the brother you deserved. I couldn't forgive him, not yet. But I recognized the power Mom had wielded over all of us, twisting love into obligation and loyalty into complicity. Mom refused to see me, sending only a message through her attorney. You're more like me than you know. Perhaps she meant it as an insult. I took it as a warning to remain vigilant about the choices I made going forward. The mansion sold quickly. Neither Rebecca nor I wanted to live with its ghosts. We used part of the proceeds to establish a scholarship fund in Dad's name. Another part went to finding and supporting other victims of Eleanor Morgan's manipulations over the years. There were more than we'd expected. Rebecca moved to Seacliff, taking a research position at the medical center. We bought beach houses next to each other. They are close, but separate. This gives us room to build the sisterhood we missed for 35 years. On quiet evenings, we walk the shore together, learning the rhythms of each other's lives. Sometimes we talk about Dad, piecing together our different versions of him into a more complete picture. Sometimes we talk about the future, hers with her research, mine with a book I've started writing about family secrets. Margaret joined us for Christmas, bringing Dad's old family photos and stories I'd never heard. We're creating a new kind of family, one built on truth, but it's painful. The grandfather clock stands in my living room now, restored and keeping perfect time. I wind it every Sunday, like Dad did. Its hidden compartment remains empty, no more secrets are necessary. Justice is a complex thing. It doesn't restore what was lost. It doesn't fill the empty chair at the dinner table or bring back the years Rebecca and I have had together. But it honors the truth, and there is power in that. I've learned that family isn't blood, name, or inheritance. It's a choice you make every day to be honest, to be present, to be kind even when it's difficult. Sometimes at sunset, I walk to the lighthouse where Dad and I once watched shooting stars fall. I imagine him there, finally at peace, his secrets laid to rest. I hope he knows his daughters found each other. I hope he knows we understand now why he made the choices he did. The legacy of lies is finally broken, and in its place, we're building something true. If you found value in this story, please subscribe to hear more tales of justice and healing. Remember that even in our darkest moments, truth has a way of finding the light if we're brave enough to help it along.